University. I mean, you're originally, of course, you're from the Philippines, and you very recently won a very prestigious award for the BAME, which is a very big congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Is there, and you're also the head of the Filipino community here in Oxford, which is another great organization. And you've told me so much about it. It sounds like a fantastic group of people. Is a large community of Filipinos within the OUH, or is there?
Yeah, so I mean, in Oxfordshire, I think we believe more or less 3,000 Filipinos
Amazing.
working and living across the Oxfordshire area.
Yes.
At the OUH, I think more or less 600 nurses, I think. But we have
Amazing.
also, healthcare assistants, we have porters, we have Filipinos working in radiology, for example,
Mhm.
department, also in laboratory, and also in portering and domestic services. So there's quite a lot.
Mm.
In 2002, when I first arrived in Oxford, there was no organized community, and 2 months later I was so depressed. The
Mm.
trust is very good in providing support in terms of mentoring and coaching and
Yeah.
your educators and managers. But my problem at the time was when I went home in my bedroom and closed the door and the curtains of my windows, that where homesickness kick
Mm.
in, and the missing your family, missing home, and that's the start of loneliness. But I'm glad that I told my manager about how I feel at that time. So the manager
Mm.
said to me, Ariel, why not you go out with friends and enjoy life? And obviously, during that time, there was no COVID-19, so we
No, of
were
course not.
free to
No.
go out
Yeah.
and enjoy life. So, we started barbecue, we
Hmm.
started going out, and that was the start. Initially, five of us, and then eventually 12 of us.
It
And
just
that
kept
was
on
the
growing.
birth of the Filipino community of Oxfordshire. And we
Mm.
were lucky at the time because there was a missionary nun who was
Mm.
assigned in Oxford, and she was very instrumental to bring us together. And we set up the Filipino community of Oxfordshire. And as I said, initially a handful of people, but now more or less 3,000 Filipinos.
Wow. Amazing.
And I was elected as the chairman, and I've been
Nice.
serving as the chairman of the community since then until now. But I learned a lot from being the chairman of the community, and because of that work, I was also elected as the national president of the Filipino Nurses Association of the United Kingdom.
Oh
And we know
wow,
that
I
more or
didn't
less
know.
there are 35,000 Filipinos working in the United Kingdom, both in the National Health Service and in
Amazing.
the private care home services and
Hmm.
facilities. So there's a lot, and I am thank you for mentioning my award. So I I was one of the two winners of the UK
Yes.
BAME Nurse of the Year
Same. Yeah.
2021. And I think it for me it gave me a boost of energy and pride, being recognized, and I am dedicating the award to all nurses in the UK, BAME and non-BAME, and throughout the world, who are keeping the health services alive and responsive to the needs of our
Yeah.
people and the community that we serve. And I think it's very important that the public recognize and appreciate and value, the contributions of not only the BAME but all healthcare workers,
Absolutely.
who are looking after the health of our nation.
Hmm. And I absolutely agree. And congratulations again for it. And it's so important because a lot of our hopefully future graduates, including my fellow classmates, we hope to become biomedical scientists or work in the national health, more towards, I guess, the behind the scenes. I don't think we'll be on the front lines, right next to the nurses, but hopefully we'll be able to support them. And I think, especially now over this past year, I can't believe it's already been over a year. I think more and more people are more encouraged and more determined now to even go and work for the NHS and to further support it. And we do really appreciate everything you've done. And on to our next question. Um, are there any particular characteristics after working as a nurse that people underevaluate or do not give enough credit to you? And if so, do you try and teach these characteristics within now your position in the hospital and also within your doctorate?
I mean, for me, I think is the big R. I think the respect and acceptance of the diversity. I think, and some people perhaps maybe didn't realize
Mm,
the differences in terms of the training as well as the practice of nurses. So what I am preaching and teaching really is to synergize, to come together, and people of different background and different upbringing and and skills, because I believe that we can learn from each other, and it's very important to accept that there are strengths in our differences. So I mean, I think the one many maybe one of the reasons why people don't appreciate is maybe because they don't fully understand the diversity of culture,
mm,
because it's different from the way we do things here.
absolutely.
So for me, cultural integration must work both ways. So the British public should understand the culture of our overseas nurses coming into this country, but also the overseas nurses should also understand the culture of the homegrown nurses and the public. And that's
Mm,
part of my role as an educator, to have that cultural sensitivity, but also to emphasize that we don't want people to lose their own culture or their own
no.
identity, but we can blend together. So synergy is the name of the game, that we can coexist, but we are working together for a common purpose. And I
Common
think
purpose. Yeah.
that kind of attitude and characteristics, I think that we should emphasize to the public and to the future generation, I think.
Mm. I think especially nowadays there is such a big celebration and, like you said, a more wider awareness of other cultures, and that you know reaching that middle ground and celebrating each other's cultures and actually learning from each other's cultures. I think also what you were saying, and what's so crucial about your role as well, is allowing like those overseas nurses. Yes, they're coming here to learn, different attributes or different new skills to accommodate this common cause. But at the same time, when they come over, so we learn more from what they have brought. So it's just a constant giving, really. It's amazing.
Indeed, indeed. And I always say this to my students and to the staff, seek to understand, to be understood,
Mm,
and listen with fascination rather than be very quick to judge and
absolutely.
criticize. In the past, some nurses say, "Oh, this is the way we do things here in Oxford."
Mm,
Well, yes, but
yeah.
can we be open-minded and
Mm,
look at other practices? It might be that other practices are much better and cost-effective. So let's learn from each other.
mm,
Sharing and learning from each other, I think, and that is one of the values of the trust, one of the six values, which is learning.
mm,
So we learn from each other, and I'm very proud. I've been working at OUH for, as I said, almost 19 years
yes, yeah.
now, and I don't have any intention to leave. Don't get me wrong; it is not a perfect place to work, because there's
I
no
don't think
such
there's
thing as a
any.
perfect
Yeah, I was gonna
place.
say there's no perfect place to work, but
Indeed, indeed, but I'm very proud, and I am doing my part, my share in making a difference and making an influence to
mhm,
make things better for patients and for staff.
absolutely. Do you think now there's a bit more of there's a better understanding now? Is this understanding and this, I guess, how can you put it? Well, this kind of easing of, I guess, of methodology, saying like you were saying, like Oxford, well, it could be Oxford, it could be London, it could be anywhere, where their methodology is now becoming a bit more not flexible, but they're open to more ideas. Is that's gotten a lot better nowadays, has it? Yes.
Certainly, certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in the trust for almost 19 years. I have seen how culture
How it's
changed, and
evolved.
it's
Yes.
changing for the better. And we are very much open now. And in fact, we set up the so-called shared governance councils, which
Hmm.
is basically a shared governance decision-making council, where junior members of staff are given protected time every single month. They come together as a group for 6 hours to talk about things that matters to them, matters to their
Hmm.
colleagues and their patients, and they themselves put together some recommendations and possible
Yes.
solutions to this problem. And the ward managers are their sponsors and enablers. So before, it's always the ward managers who makes
Mhm.
decisions. But the reality is, not all the time ward managers know things. In fact, they don't know. So, these people who are doing the job
Who are
really
actually in
understand
the
and
field.
know what's the problem and the solution. So now we as leaders, managers, and educators in the trust, we are just enabling them, to come up with the solutions or the possible solutions to the problems that they have identified. So I can tell that there's a big change in terms of the decision making as well as the culture of
Mhm.
the organization.
Absolutely. And I was just, this is a bit of a sidetrack too, because of course, nursing by being so much in the field and so much with the patient contact, but this society is a biomedical one and we're much more orientated in the lab. From your experiences, what kind of interactions could potentially the students listening now have interactions with nurses? Is there any real interaction between nurses and biomedical scientists, or is it kind of two ends of, I guess, a telephone line, and there's always an intermediary person communicating between them, or is there direct contact between them?
So I think it is very important to recognize that everybody has a vital role to play,
Hmm.
because obviously nurses alone cannot run the hospital. Doctors alone cannot run
No,
the hospital. So we
absolutely.
we need we need people like you, the bio medical scientists, the pathology, the radiology, other allied health professionals, our domestic staff, our portering staff. We are all
Team.
equal, and
Yes.
that's how we emphasize things, that we are all together in this, looking after our patients. So in terms of interaction, it comes, as what you said, in many forms and in many ways. So there are direct patient contact, there's direct interaction between professionals. Some of this are done through telephone, and obviously, especially for laboratory, I work in intensive care, and we work
Hmm.
closely with them. We just pick up the telephone and clarify and have the conversation, especially if we need an urgent examination to be done. So that kind of thing, and relationship is always a two-way process, and
Absolutely.
communication is always a two-way process.
What was some of the example? Could you give me an example of, I guess, a biomedical scientist communicating to nurses? Because, like, you gave an example just now of a nurse communicating, like an adult ICU nurse communicating to a biomedical scientist, to get these examinations done, or the prescription dosage. Well, I think the prescription dosages is also determined by the doctor, but certain values and certain blood values changes to the diagnosis can happen, I guess, through the biomedical scientist as well. But the vice versa between a biomedical scientist communicating to a nurse, how can that typically happen?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about laboratory results, for example, like the blood culture, for example, or
Hmm.
sensitivity test, for example, they usually ring us and tell us that this is the result so that we can adjust antibiotics, for example.
Hmm.
Or, for example, patients on DIC, for example, in
Yeah.
excessive bleeding, for example,
Hmm.
when we ask them to check for factor 10 or clotting factors, for example, then they will give us, they will ring us, even without us prompting them. So
Hmm.
so they know how essential, how vital those informations, and that is true with other professionals or other scientists. For example, the radiology, for example, if we have this MRI or CT scan, for example, as soon as they find something wrong there, they will inform the nurses and the doctors. So that kind of relationship that we establish, again, it's all about that team working and
Absolutely.
understanding your responsibility, accountability, and that partnership with other
Hmm.
members of the multidisciplinary team.
Absolutely. That's, it's not just your role, but your role interplays with other roles. Absolutely. It's a chain of
Indeed.
communication and of teamwork. And just as our penultimate question, to our listeners, well, listening, like, what would you suggest to anyone who is considering working towards the trust, as any advice or knowledge you would pass on to them if they're unsure whether to work in the trust?
Well,
It's a
I
very big
am
question.
encouraging everybody.
Absolutely. But let's say you had to try and convince someone. Let's say, oh, okay, I'm considering considering to work for the trust, but I'm still, lacking in information or lacking in knowing what the environment is like within the trust. How would you buy them to bring them into the trust?
Indeed, indeed. So the first thing first is, I think, sometimes it's good to try before you buy. So there are a lot
Mm,
of avenues. So first thing, I think, get in touch with recruitment and retention leads, for example. Get in touch with people like me, who's involved with training and education. Arrange for a walk around, for example, and
mm,
we facilitate that, or just work with us for 1 day, or just shadow for 2 days, and have a look around.
yeah.
um, that's one thing you can do. Another thing is, we have a lot of apprenticeship programs as well
Mm,
that you can do. For example, you can work with us for 1 year, and some of these programs are paid programs, for example. The most important thing here is to ask, and be
yes.
proactive, be in control of your own education, if you like, and your own career. And I keep saying this to my students and my staff, that there are two types of motivation: the external motivation and the internal motivation.
Hmm.
The external motivation are those external forces that will push you and drive you to do more. But another type of motivation is that's something that comes from within you.
Mm,
Now, so don't hesitate
hmm.
to get in contact with people. If you don't know anyone, you can get in touch with our HR, for example. I'm
Yes.
talking about our trust, but I'm sure that it is the same with other
Yes.
trust.
Yeah.
It's always start with assessment, I think.
Hmm.
If you don't if you are still discerning and thinking, why not have a look, arrange for a walk around, and
Mm,
ask for a day or two working with us, and then you can make your decisions.
fantastic. And are you enjoying your time now doing your doctorate at Brooks? How's that going?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, because
I
you
am the
said you're
kind
in
of
your
person.
yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
you're in your third year, and is that's out of five, I imagine, or is it four?
That's right. Well, I mean, the program itself, because it is part-time
Ah,
program, is between 4 to 7 years, and I
mm,
set myself for 5 years. So
okay,
I am hoping to finish
over halfway. Yeah, over
and
halfway.
graduate in 5 years.
Mm,
I am, the kind of person that my view of the world is, the more I learn, the more I will be able to share and support and teach others.
yeah,
So I need to arm myself, as I said, with that academic qualifications, but also the experience. Because how can I encourage my educators to study PhD or Doctor of Education if I myself haven't experienced it?
it's very
So
good of you. Yeah.
and I think the most important thing is, you are, as what you said, you are enjoying what you are doing, and you are committed to it.
Mm,
So it's not a knee jerk decision.
no.
I thought about this. So I've done my master's in nursing education, and then I reflected on it. And really, that prepared me for this doctoral studies. So because of that, I inspired a few people. So in
Oh,
fact, three of
great.
us now are doing the doctoral studies, and in the
Oh,
whole
that's
trust, I
great.
think there are about 18 of us, I think, doing the doctoral
Those
studies.
trusted. Fantastic. Great. You're tagging them along with you then. That's great. Yeah. And as our last question, thank you so much. It's been lovely to have you as our last guest on the podcast for this year. It's been quite the journey. And as a tradition on our podcast, we always ask our guests if they would invite any inspirational or admirable person they have in to who which they sorry to who which they admire to an evening over dinner or as a dinner guest. Who would your dinner guest be? Who would be a favorite person? And they could be from passed away or still currently alive. It could be a very important figure to you. Who would it be?
Wow, if I have the power, the
I know
opportunity
it's a
to
very
invite,
big question, yeah, because like, gosh, to bring someone back from the dead just for dinner, it's a bit, yeah, it's a bit dramatic, yeah.
I would invite Dalai Lama. Dalai
Okay.
Lama, because I am inspired of what he said. He said, if you speak,
Mm-hmm.
you are only repeating what you already know.
Mm.
but if you listen, you may know something new. And I
uh,
think for me, that is deep and profound,
mm.
that we need to listen, and
Mm.
listen with fascination, listening to understand. Because as what I keep saying, that sometimes the behavior of people in front of us are just the signs and symptoms of a much, much deeper problem underneath that we don't know. So I'd like to know more and learn from him,
Mm.
and, and
Being,
ask
yeah.
him, the technique and the style of listening, because obviously as human beings, sometimes our default position is to get our voices heard, and we
Mm.
want, we want to claim that,
Yeah.
we are right sometimes. But for me, I think I learned a lot from him, and I really wanted
Mm.
to have a conversation over dinner
Absolutely.
with the Dalai Lama.
It'd be very interesting. I think you're so right. I think nowadays we're in a generation where information is overcrowded almost. There's a excess of information. And obviously we can only absorb so much or listen so much, and we let a lot of that, really valuable knowledge just go right past us. And I don't think we don't even realize. So maybe taking a breath and taking it slowly and actually really care, because I think that's a skill. It's a very, very important skill to have in life in general, to be able to intently listen and learn. I mean, it definitely, I do see what you mean. It's such a profound sentence, really, because yeah, no, it would be very interesting. Yeah.
How I
uh
wish.
yeah, I mean, it'll be a interesting dinner. And I guess you'll be doing a lot of listening that dinner. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
will be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for having us, and thank you for everyone listening for our last interview with our guest. Next time, we will be coming together as a committee to say our farewells. It might be a little bit of a sad episode, but we're also having, a look back over these past 14 episodes, 13 episodes now,
Wow.
not including episode one, but our 13 interview guests. And it's been a journey, and I hope everyone listening has enjoyed it as much as me, myself, and my committee have. And thank you so much, Ariel, for joining us and for being a part of this project. And yeah, tune in for our last episode. Thank you all for listening. Take care.
Thank you.